MGT and Rival. As well as MT8. But that's not all. This truck is awesome. It is huge. Same with this truck. I did the Revo tank mod because the Revo tank is superior to the stock tank. And I did the GPM shock towers. One of the body post mounts, I think it was on the rear of the stock, was broken, so I went ahead and got the aluminum upgrade. I am going to switch back to the stock shocks. I've accumulated enough of them. Here's the original 8.0. I got this from Emax Racer on Instagram a few years back. Didn't really do much to it other than the shock towers and the tank. So the rest of it is how it came. I did switch the shocks also. These are HPI, I think, Trophy Buggy shocks. They're actually pretty good. But I'm going to go back to the dual stock setup. So that's pretty much what's going on here. The only thing I switched on this electric one is the body. It did come with a pretty much brand new body. So, and then for the MT8, I got this used for significantly cheaper than the original price, and I broke the steering link doing some flips. As you can see, I got the upgraded aluminum one. The radio also went on me, so I just put a Fly Sky in it for now. So the main thing that I find interesting between the two electric 8th scale monster trucks is the size. There's a significant difference in size between the old generation and the new generation. And I feel like you got more for your dollar with the old generation. The difference in length, significant. Both trucks are super tough though, so no fault on either one, except for I think that you got more value for the older version. It's really cool to see something big like this go soaring through the air and land smoothly and drive away. This is what I've got for bodies and wheels. I'm not going to use this one. Some of the stickers came off this one. That's thrashed. Still good though. All 3 sets of wheels and tires are good. Five extra electric chassis, 2 extra nitro chassis. This is what I've got for brand new parts, except for the shock rebuild kits. Those were all opened. I don't remember where I acquired those. One of these is opened and the posts are missing, but there's 3 of those. Some extra knuckles, some clutches, shock hardware, back plate for an 8.0, some gears, some nitro stuff disassembled. Some of these are electric as well. I separated it nitro and electric for the differentials because there is a difference. I think, at least it's noticeable on the housings. More on that later. So yeah, and as you can see, this stuff needs some TLC. But got enough stuff here to build some nice trucks. I've also got a couple parts bins stacked. All the chassis parts, and aluminum skid plates, and everything you can need. This bin full of parts as well. Needless to say, we could build some nice trucks. So, I'll go ahead and get started building one. I think I'm going to go with the nitro to start. These chassis are really nice, machined aluminum. They're damn near impossible to bend. Unfortunately, some of the screws are stripped or rusted in on some of these other chassis here, so but we'll get that out. Unfortunately, those are stripped, and there's an issue with this one too. But we'll go ahead and get started with this chassis. I want to use this body here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and organize this to build one truck, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I've got it organized enough to start getting lots together to start these builds. And I don't have instructions for the MGT, I only have it for the rival. But, yeah. It's pretty much the same, except for the chassis itself, which is pretty self-explanatory. And I can go off the already together one I have, if I get confused. But, I'll go ahead and start getting these parts together. I did forget to share the fact that I do have this. Looks like it may have been dropped by the previous owner, but still a piece of history right here. I know I have another little part slot for these somewhere else. My buddy gave me a cooling head for one. And I know that engine mount and exhaust coupler, header, came with the other parts he gave me for it. So I know I have some other parts for this engine, but yeah, just figured I'd share this piece of history with you guys. It's a real beaut. This is what I got so far. I know there's more to acquire, but this set of screws and pins came from one complete gas unit. So I'll just use the source from here to complete this. I went ahead and removed the bell crank posts. The stock screws were stripped a little bit, and the previous owner or factory put in some Loctite that was quite tough. So the old Phillips head stripped out. So I used some vice grip pliers and some elbow grease with the Phillips head, and it was able to come out barely. And because I used the vice grips, it kind of left little marks on here, but I went ahead and used some 400 grit sandpaper to smooth it out, and it doesn't feel it at all binding. So the plastic bushings or bearings on the bell crank should be fine with that. I know I've got a couple other posts I need to remove here, so at least I know that that's how I can do it successfully. RPM white knuckles. Still gotta put the screws in to hold the chrome bumper in place. I'm gonna disassemble this and clean it and reassemble it. It's pretty neat to see this. The attempt from each company to make an 8th scale monster truck. Comparing, like, you know, the Savage. This is what it looks like without servos in it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, comparing it to the LST, the Savage, the T-Max, some of the Kyosho stuff. It's really cool. So yeah, I'll probably go ahead and put these on. Disassemble this, clean it up, start putting this chassis together. So I went ahead and disassembled the servo electronic assembly, I guess, and cleaned it, took the switch out. I put that back in now. you know, just before the shot. But yeah, this is really nice plastic. Yeah, they did a really good job on this truck. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get these servos back in here. I cleaned off the screws, cleaned off the servos. So the steering servo goes in like this. Got some of the chassis done. Get some of the parts for the next parts of this build. Now I'm gonna start with the transmissions here. Disassemble them both, reassemble them proper. I gotta go through and see which differentials go in the front and rear for the nitros. I gotta source the parts from here. Go ahead and start with this one. It's complete except for the spur gear. I think this transmission actually came with that engine. Well, this is a good stopping point for now. Get started on this unit next. Alrighty, so after struggling to figure out how this goes back together, finally figured it out. It's just hard to get it lined up. So, go ahead and get that back together. I made this mistake of trying to tighten it down before things were lined up. I almost ruined the screws that it came with. That would have been really annoying. I like to keep things as close to factory as I can. So, glad I was able to figure this out. No extra parts left. That's a good sign. So I went ahead and got this all together. It was a pain in the ass, but it works. So I've decided to keep this one as a spare. It's missing this boot here to cover this port, and I know where this stands. This one, I'm not gonna fully disassemble it like I did this one here. I am gonna clean it off and then open it up just to see how things look, and then I'll reassemble it, and I'll use this transmission for this chassis. And I found some extra transmission gears, so I'll replace this spare gear here with that one. So go ahead and get this transmission stuff sorted and then get one installed in here, and then work on the front and rear end. Should take no time, and we'll have another roller. Got the transmission installed into the chassis. That's good. I took the, I don't know what these are called, but for the friction and the slipper, I took the ones out of this and filled all the holes on this extra spare gear I had. You can see here, this is just the same thing, a little bit older. It's the same 52 tooth. You can see every other hole is plugged. But I plugged all the holes on this here. I don't know, just figured may as well not waste these. So I did take this transmission apart and look at it. Everything is intact as it should be. You know, the reverse works as it should. So now it's a clean unit. I took the drive shafts off and cleaned those too. So this is good. I'm not going to put these whole screws in. Those were what was, you know, there was only marks on these mounting points on the chassis, so Next I'll get the bell crank on there. Start working on the front and rear. First I just gotta source the differentials from the parts stash. So I think most of this is all electric. Like, this is where I'll be sourcing things. But anyways, yeah. Thanks for checking it out. I'll go ahead and put the the link for the exploded views I'm using in the description. So that way, anybody else who's working on one of these can source that from this video. Not perfect, but still good. So this is where I had the issue rebuilding the diffs. This is a electric diff cover. The nitros are slightly different. This is the difference in what they look like. But on both halves, nitro and electric, the left half of the box has this pin, and in the directions it looks like it wants you to have the differential ring gear up against this part of the housing, but that doesn't work. So after finagling and failing like 10 times, I've just decided to switch it around and it works. So that's a design flaw in the directions. It should be that the differential is opposite. You want this free part without that pin to be on the ring gear. The ring gear will bind up against it if it's the other way around, so maybe that'll save you some trouble in rebuilding. I couldn't find any information on it. So yeah, but here's where the truck stands. The chassis is almost done. Get the differentials in and the arms on. Next up, I gotta clean the bell crank and then install the skid plates and bumpers. Now all I have to do is put on the drive shaft snuckles and shocks and it'll be a roller. Then I can clean the engine and install that. Clean, clean. So here's my first one. I changed the shocks in the tank and I believe the pipe. And one of the shock towers was broken where the body post goes through, so I replaced it with the aluminum ones. Aluminium. But yeah. Now I have two. I'm not gonna really do anything to disassemble and clean or maintain this one other than for functionality purpose. If something in the performance goes, then I'll replace it, but I'm just gonna leave it as is. Unfortunately, there was a little hole in this tire, but they're still good. So here we are with another one, almost done. Just got to do the shocks, drive shafts, knuckles, then I could put the wheels on it. It'll be a roller, and then I will get to the engine. Stay tuned. Went ahead and got the knuckles on there. One of them's missing a bearing though. Gotta find that bearing. But went into my stash. Forgot I had all these shocks in a different place. Just the rest of my MGT stuff. There's some gears and transmission stuff. That's where that extra 8.0 stuff is. There's more shafts, gears, a couple servos. So I'll go ahead and get 8 shocks out of here. Pick the best ones and just install them. They still feel good. If I don't have to refill them, I won't. Can't be bothered. So I'll probably also get some shocks out for this too, just to make that complete as well. This is really pissing me off. I gotta find this bearing. But other than that, we're ready to install the shocks and wheels. We'll have a roller. I think this is really smart, this design here. But after going over this truck and rebuilding it, I can see why the market is, demanding this newer technology and how these were kind of made obsolete as far as the market's demand. Of course, there's the outliers like us, but gotta find the right screws. Okay, so looking for that. We'll start there. Yeah, this is actually really annoying to rebuild. But definitely rewarding at the end. All right, one set of shocks installed. Went ahead and found the bearing I needed, so I was able to get the wheels on. It looks real good. One thing I am annoyed about though is the way that these shocks feel. There's too much rebound here. I feel like these would be better in the front with the way that they're filled, and likewise these in the rear. But before I go ahead and start messing with the shocks, I'm gonna clean the engine and get that in there. It feels really good as far as compression goes, and it doesn't look like it was used heavily. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean the rear off. I also found this Dremeled initial in there. But yeah, we'll get this cleaned up and install it, and then assess the shocks from there. It's very clean in there, so I'm going to do what I can just to knock the dust off the outside and clean the case. I'll wash off what I can from in here. We're ready to get this engine in. Figured out an easier way to get these bolts into this mount and onto the screws. Figured I'd share that with you guys. So for any Team Associated or Schumacher, you know, old vintage engine mount stuff that you need to put the bolt into the mount, very annoying. Just take the 2.0 and put the bolt over it, because it's the same diameter pretty much as the screw, and then just make the ends meet of the screw and the screwdriver, and once they bite, you're able to then tighten it down as needed. So I didn't know if this would be helpful for anyone else, because I was kind of scratching my head for a minute, annoyed how I would get this in. And then that's what I figured out. So now I can attach the mount to the chassis and then adjust this as needed before I install the cooling head. I was only able to find one mounting screw, so I had to search in the stash to find some more that were the same size. Thank goodness I had them. So we'll go ahead and get this engine installed. Well, I was adjusting the motor on the mount to be flush with the spur gear, And when I was tightening down the last one, the screw twisted right off. So I've got that part lined up at least. So I'll have to take the motor out and find another replacement screw and get that done. So once I do that, I'll put the head on. Here it is. I went ahead and replaced all the screws just because I had it apart, so I took that time to do it. Took advantage of that time to do it. Here it is under the hood. Everything is as it should be. Gear mesh is nice. This unit, or the transmission and this engine were in the same unit, but the spur gear was shot and all the melted teeth were inside the teeth of this clutch bell, so I had to scrape all those out to make sure that we had some nice mesh, if you will. So yeah, I gotta attach the servo saver to the servo for the steering. Gotta get a filter and hook up a radio and receiver to test this. But it is complete. The shocks in the rear a little bouncy, a little bouncier than I would prefer, but feels good. So successful build. Very nice. So yeah, this overview turned into a rebuild, but that's all right. I gotta take this one out and see where it stands before I change anything on it. And then I gotta test this with the low CLST I just rebuilt, as well as the Savage XL. So this one was mostly nitro. I do have the rival as well. I gotta take that out, run that soon too. One thing that did come, good thing that came out of this was that I was able to organize all my MGT parts. Got everything bagged up and all together nicely. So I just gotta finish cleaning this stuff and go through the rest of it. Put this stuff away and get on to the next one. So thanks for checking it out. Coming along with this rebuild process. Gorgeous machines. But after rebuilding one, I can see why they're now out of business or discontinued. This thing's a pain in the ass to work on. I gotta say, I think the Losi LST is the best one to work on after doing a Savage, T-Maxes, the MGTs, and some of the armored vehicles, like the Nero, for example. Losi's definitely the easiest to work on, but anyways, back to these. These are gorgeous for what they are. And with what I just said, I still appreciate them. It's not to be mistaken, but pain in the ass to work on.